Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I may get to stay. We'll see. And if I leave, it'll just be for 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, and like I said, this probably won't take very long. Like it's not we're almost done, believe it or not, after 3 full sessions worth of time just rehashing what's happened over the past 2 years. We are actually close to being done. So, so we're gonna continue with part 3 of our recap now, and going through. I wanted to kind of pick up, and I know we sort of glanced over it, but now that we have one of our players that's playing Steve back, I did want to jump back a little bit and talk about the obtaining of the armory. So this was something that specifically Steve's character Steve, wanted to cash in with regards to his boon from the prince, and from like a metagame standpoint, I generally had the boons that I've given out a couple to the players now for a number of things that they've done. But basically I have it to be 10 experience points worth of something. And in this case, we have 10 points worth of backgrounds. And so Scott actually reached out and asked if this was something that, he could look into and do. And so, I was intrigued. I always love it when, players have kind of an idea of where they can go with their characters. And in this particular case, Scott, if you want to talk about what Steve's interests were in that, and then some of our conversations, have at it, jump on in.
Sure. So I wanted to claim the armory for the boon as Steve, because it seemed like it was going to be very helpful to the coterie to have a little bit more firepower, because they seem to be going up against a lot of tough enemies ranging from werewolf to other vampires. I thought it, and just everything. So
yeah, and you were kind of curious about like the crafting system and everything, and that isn't very well
it's not well documented.
No, so we really had to kind of come up with thoughts. I mean, the first step was, okay, let's determine. In my head, I'm thinking 10 points worth of of background, and so I even tapped into the Hunter. The Reckoning has a background, and I sort of morphed it a little bit, but called Arsenal. And so I had it kind of three different backgrounds all tied together. So it was resources, it was Arsenal, and then I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Domain. Yeah, domain.
Yeah.
Because it's a physical space, and it'd be something that would be kind of deeded over to you from the kindred. But yeah, so that was definitely interesting. I remember your emails kind of like come across, be like, is this even something? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, it should be.
Yeah, they reference it a lot loosely in the book. Like, you can make things and craft things, but then when you go looking for information, it's kind of hard to find. So I kind of wanted Steve, as this sort of reclusive, antisocial person, to have more of some sort of helpful hobby for the coterie, something to contribute where his words fall short.
And it was, or it certainly could turn out that way. So what exactly? So your boon, you wanted to go. You talked to the prince, and then so what happened with that?
Yeah, we claimed the boon. The prince gave us a space in the downtown area, a small workshop with a workbench. It had basically everything we needed in there to get started crafting and gunsmithing, specifically gunsmithing. And ammunition design was the perk, the specialty that I believe I chose. And the way that unfolded was that we had a meeting with the Megadon scientist, who was
Don, can you run into the
sort of running everything, and he handed over some design schematics that we could quickly assimilate to produce UV bullets and silver-tipped bullets. And then that ended up becoming part of the payment that I would have to then put forth to sort of pay for the space to the prince, sort of do my part to give back, and then supply the coterie with whatever was left over. And I believe we didn't get too far into this process because the story sort of went where it went.
And then you weren't able to make a number of the sessions too in the end, and a couple of them. And so we had you kind of just doing the whole mad scientist thing, focusing down and really working with the with Megadon's blueprint. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we did talk about that last time we talked, but like I said, you weren't there for that recap. So having you guys. You guys had set up a meeting with Megadon and their Dr. Taylor, who is kind of he's assistant manager, regional manager for Megadon Now Technologies, and basically looking at the development specifically of specialized ammunition. And so how do you kind of feel that session went? Because there were a couple of things going on at that time. John had his idea that he wanted to try and find a way to psychically implant a suggestion with Dr. Taylor in hopes of breaching Megadon's cybersecurity. But your motives were far less. You were more just direct and I'll say truthful with regards to your approach. So, kind of what were your thoughts, and from your perspective, how that session went?
So, Steve, it was an opportunity to continue building the armory and to get the resources that he needed for the armory, but it was also an opportunity to use a skill, sense the sin, on Dr. Taylor, which uncovered this sort of cold-hearted sort of science above all else personality that Dr. Taylor has with regards to his perception, well-being of any life, really. He didn't seem to have any respect for life in general. And so that helped Steve sort of understand Taylor's motives and place in the corporation, and why this person is working with all these different entities, such as all of these occult entities. And that he kind of helps Steve better gauge and understand where this person is sort of on the scale of humanity, which is probably quite low.
Yeah.
And that way, if push comes to shove, we know what choices that we can make with good conscience.
Yeah, and the other kind of interesting part of that too, for me, as the storyteller was trying to figure out, because I didn't want Dr. Taylor going alone, because he never would, right? So with him was the head of security at the in the regional office for Megadon. Was actually, what you guys come to find out, that same Black Spiral dancer from when you guys had done the drop off a number of sessions before. Months before. But so interestingly enough, we had you guys roll, and it was all based on the dice, right? If you guys had rolled pretty well on subterfuge and stealth or whatever, trying to mask and manipulation, the Black Spiral would have been kind of just disinterested and just sort of almost annoyed to be there, was the way I was going to play that. But instead, I think it was John. Is it John? Were you the one that rolled pretty low on that one? Someone rolled pretty low on that one, and so it kind of tipped him off, and so he was on kind of high alert. So we had to play that off, and it actually made it so that you guys didn't have that opportunity to sort of single them out. Whereas if the Black Spiral dancer had been a sway, he'd been totally just lulled into kind of boredom, you could have actually separated the two. But in this case,
I think that was Vincent's fault on that one for mad dogging him at the door. Pretty sure.
Yeah. So with Vincent giving it away, almost giving away the farm, and I mean, if it had gone to a botch, that could have started a combat, which would have been very interesting. But you guys did have a ringer in the form of newly abomination created Riley who is up with Jessica. Which would have only taken a few rounds to get down. So you guys would have it would have been a fighting retreat for them to get the hell out of Dodge. And that just would have thrown a monkey wrench at everything. And that would have been like, you guys would have had the prince crawling up your ass if that happened, trying to figure out what the hell went wrong with his what would be a very blossoming relationship at the expense of basically all vampire kind, according to you guys. And for what you would uncover. But I thought it was just an interesting session, kind of a fun one. And I know your character was sort of the focal point of that one. And your sense to sin really did show just how, just cold and evil this guy really just is. I mean, it's almost like he's just not even, he doesn't care about good or evil as long as it's for the advancement of quote unquote science. And so in doing so, he becomes, thoroughly evil, right? So it's kind of an interesting little session. You guys got to get a unique peek behind the curtains and a contact that I wasn't anticipating you guys would be able to have. So that's kind of fun from a storyteller standpoint. It's always fun when you get little kind of curveballs, but allows you to sort of show off other aspects or tie into different things that players might not even see. Because believe it or not, I mean, they have this and more technologies that you guys aren't even aware of that they're working on the side, they being Megadon along with the Prince. So it's kind of, you guys are getting one piece of that, and I'm not giving anything away. I'm sure you guys could understand, they would be working on a number of different angles, especially with how many things you guys would find when you're hacking. So, is there anything else anybody would like to say about that session before we move on?
I have a quick question.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Not about this session, but I think it relates. So, who was in the limousine in the scene with the solar satellite strike?
Was
that
excellent.
Megadon?
Yes. So that actually ties directly into where we're going next with I think from the newly formed sheriff, Reggie, who was assigned to kind of bury the last little bits of like hanging chads from the whole solar incident with regards to the masquerade breach, and directly assigned by the Archon of the region to do so, above and beyond the Prince in this case. So that is keep that in mind. If anyone else has any questions or any comments related to that session, I saw a couple people want to talk. We'll talk about those, and then we'll go and jump into that very question and dive into that. It was Megadon. It was Megadon, and you'll see why here for your reveal as to what happened and why it happened.
I just wanted to add that Vincent didn't botch that roll. He just didn't make
he failed.
the roll.
Yeah. The botch was, that's why I had to be very clear. The botch would have been the fight. The fail was they were on high alert and he was like, no, what's going on here? Something doesn't feel right. Evil worm, spidery senses tingling for that. Yeah. So we forgive you. I tried to blame John, but he was good. He was up on it and deflected. So that was that. And then, so you guys weren't able, and this is something John corrected me in the last recap. I just had my notes. I tried to jot down the different sessions, thinking back on them in as much chronological order as I could. But the main one, though, so that was your first attempt to try and find kind of a back door and to get, the sort of bad USB into the port of Megadon so that you could help the Nosferatu, who agreed to do a hacking party to try and break into Megadon's cybersecurity. So upon searching, you guys ended up finding this other this other lady who is almost estranged from the company anyway, and was having hell of problems with it. And eventually you would do that to her. So you got her to agree to upload that when she went in the next day into work. And she was on file for, she was being watched for like child negligence and other things that, she said was bullshit. And the company was trying to silence her and everything, but she was still going to have access, she said. And apparently it would happen. So after that, let's see here. The next one, the coterie meets as Jessica's, informs Vincent about Riley's embrace. So this is the first time. So I guess Vincent finds out about Riley's embrace, but this is actually before that. I'm trying to get all my everything right here. Let's see. Did I have that? Okay. So then the coterie wants to show Riley the vampire ropes and got the address of a problem drug den from R-Dog. So the PCs storm the drug den and attack the armed dealers. It's a tough fight with an ex-military, Trey, the drug boss, having done significant damage despite his human designator. So that was actually really quick, and I'll let you guys open the floor. But it was just supposed to be kind of an in and out thing to show you guys, like, you guys could do your thing and be powerful for a session. And unfortunately, it didn't play out. It didn't play out that way. The dice were a combination of very poorly rolled on the part of the players and very well rolled on the part of the storyteller. So anyway, but you guys storm this area to try and show Riley, like, how we do things, how do you feed, how you deal with combat, because it's a big part of life in my game. So anyway, who wants to talk about that session, or are we gonna kind of ignore that one since it has such a strong negative feeling in everyone's mind?
Allow me to set the record slightly straight here. Just nudge it a little to the center here. I would characterize that session as, first of all, a resounding success on the part of the people downstairs. My dice had no issue dealing with people. I don't know what was going on upstairs with all that mess, but that's what happens when the others are left unsupervised. But Regal, Riley, and Ward did just dandy.
Yeah,
now,
you guys handed them their butt downstairs for sure.
I will also take the blame for this one expanding into a nightmare, because it was supposed to be showing Riley the ropes, but Ward did very much suggest that a first-time feeding for an unknown creature, like some abomination, werewolf, vampire, hybrid monstrosity, could very well go south. So we better find, and I think he found a more diplomatic way to say it, but basically, let's find ourselves some expendable feeding victims. So we did contact R-Dog for, hey, is there a problem building that you would like, that you wouldn't mind if they all just ended up victims of an unfortunate event, knowing that it could go that way.
Yeah, and from his behind the scenes, thinking about that, I'm like, well, there has to be like drug dens that they know about, but because of the Sabbat invasion, because of all the masquerade problems, and just all of the vampire politicking, the viciousness that's going on right now, he was just like, this one, yeah, take this one. That one's just, it's been a headache. This guy shot up a cop, and you remember their drug dealer leader was actually a suspected cop killer, and that would come out later though. But he was ex-military, so he shot for the head, which was a problem for some of the players as they tried to storm in, and he would cover down, and most of them, they went through room to room and would find, it's either a mix between, an armed drug dealer that was holed up, thinking it was a police raid because you guys announced it as such, or it was like, people so high on drugs that they didn't know what was going on anyway. Or in one case, the little girl that had a deceased mom from an overdose that was in the upstairs. That Vincent would find, I believe. And and have to try and work out how to deal with that. So lots going on that session. It was actually quite interesting to kind of storytell her out and think about this as logically as I could. But yeah, kind of interesting how it played out for sure. Still, I mean, in the end, and I've said this before, but it wasn't as much of a true threat to you guys. But I could see, it was very annoying to many of the players because a lot of, like I said, good placed shots to the head, lots of lethal damage in the end, upstairs in particular when they were going after the drug kingpin, and he was tough to bring down. But you guys did bring him down and dominate him. I think Jessica just had to do that with a flick of the wrist, right? Or a batting of the eyelashes.
Well, yes, but at least it's fair to say she also almost died during that session too, when she was shot in the head. So it wasn't painless.
Yep. Yeah, and Cedar was there doing like what John was talking about and trying, because he's the sire of Riley now, and basically responsible for her. And responsible for her learning the ropes of all vampire kind. So right now, until she's officially shed off of him, he will take any and all punishment that she incurs.
Also, let's not forget he's responsible for creating an abomination as well.
Yeah.
I was going to ask who
know that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask who knows that at this point.
The coterie and the coterie only, and unless somebody directly confronts us, that is not something we're saying.
Oh yeah, you guys will be final death in a heartbeat for that.
Yeah. Yeah, so as it stands right now, as far as they know, everything's more or less on the up and up, with the prince having agreed to allow Ringil to sire a vampire into the gangrel, and kind of no questions asked and whatnot. So you might be able to fall back a little bit on that and sort of use that term against him if it were to ever come up. But we'll have to play that one as it comes to fruition. But to be clear, and anybody who's
Hey, Riley, no.
What?
Nothing. Never mind.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, it's most of the time it talks very briefly about abominations in the books, and so for my part, and just for everybody's knowledge, I do have full statted out Riley. She has almost as much experience as you guys have, and she's down about 20 or so, but not much, and drop in the bucket compared to how much you guys actually have. But I said basically it seemed to me like the rule suggested that nothing on the spiritual side would advance any further. They don't actually lose their gnosis. They maintain their gnosis, but they can't ever increase it beyond its maximum. And same with rage. So those two become static. Willpower is unaffected. It's the same thing it was before. Gains a blood pool depending on, in this case, she was 10th generation. And, because Ringil was 9, and then she can no longer pick up any gifts unless they are banes that provide it for her, and but she can pick up disciplines, and since she's gangrel, she has gangrel clan disciplines as in clan, and now she can advance as a vampire with the other, but she maintains all of the gifts that she knew, and she can step sideways and all this. So all in all, it's a pretty gnarly character, really. And it's an interesting one in that, the big question is, most of the legends surrounding abominations, they go insane pretty quickly. And, usually you have to have a special set of circumstances. I think they all kind of fell into place here, though. So, as a storyteller, if it just, picked up some random Joe off the street and it was a werewolf, they had embraced it or tried to, it'd probably just be destroyed, right? That's the vast majority of them would happen. But in this case, she hated her kind more than she hated vampirism. And by and large, at that point, with what happened to her, she hated him so much that she hated him every bit as much as a black spiral, or she would hate a black spiral, and every bit as much as she should hate the worm. And so her world's kind of been turned upside down. So her heart's in the coterie. And so I thought that that was an important, it's almost like it became her pack. And so it sort of worked its way into her soul in such a way that I felt it would have the best chance of success for her to actually be embraced. Now, the question of insanity does come up, and we'll just have to see how that plays out in the game. But
on a side note of that, I think what she's got going for her for justification of not going insane is that, first of all, she's gangrel. I mean, gangrel is as close to vampire or close to a werewolf as you can get without actually being a werewolf. There's number one, but number two, the coterie took her in. It's
before even embrace.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's been instated a long time ago is that, family, and the coterie accepted her as family before she was ever embraced. You know, so I think that all that really does work for her in a psychological way as much as in a physical way as well.
Yeah, and for her, I mean, she was kind of at the point where it's like, either she would get embraced or she would die, and both were acceptable to her, if that makes sense. Like she was not in a place where not being embraced was an option, really. I mean, I know we talk about, the strife between, Ringil and Ward and how that came about. And, that's certainly a point of contention. But from her standpoint, she really didn't have any option, because she was done either way, and she would embrace death, or she would be embraced. And then, but her hope was that she could be embraced, because she definitely has an axe to grind, and she's already mentioned it a few times to you guys, if you recall. But going after this coterie is definitely high on her personal list of things she wants to do, or not coterie, of the pack that had been torturing her basically, and leveraging her forced position into the caretaker of a cairn that was basically barely active and just sort of as a placeholder until the guru could bring in force and retake the cairn in full. So she was just there to keep it open, essentially, once a month. And that was kind of her tasking on the guru side.
Lord will be looking for a Christmas card in the mail this year from her, as a thank you for that, by the way. Gringo might be mad, but I imagine I'm on her Christmas list.
Well, she really loves Ringo, so if he's mad at you, she'll probably get a little mad at you just from osmosis.
Wonder how the conversation is going to go then when Ward explains how she ended up being embraced. Then,
yeah.
Well, I will explain it in that I wanted to try and save her life rather than just turn her.
And Ward will have to explain that he wanted to empower her to lash out at the people who hurt her because he agrees.
Well, she would have been able to do the same either anyway.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that conversation plays out.
Sounds like a good one. I was going to ask if does Riley know?
Simply be Switzerland and say that she just wanted to make sure that she had this gift because she was family. Oh.
Yeah, and for her part, she does see you as family. What were you going to ask? Ben?
Oh, I was going to ask, does Riley know the Tremere Chantry is built around a cairn?
Does she know? She knows the. I don't think
she probably would have felt it.
I don't think she's been. She's only been to Dumbarton Oaks from the Tremere side, and she would know that the spiritual connection is very and because it's a park, it's most likely a cairn. So I think it's safe to say she probably suspects it is, but she's also pragmatic enough to see how many vampires and how warded it was. And so if you guys recall, one thing she was thinking about doing, and this was before she had basically abandoned the guru, but and this is a side quest you guys could have gone on if you guys had really wanted to embrace like her and her story. But she had mentioned she could step sideways with a little bit of help. She could get the body of that, what she thinks was a Fiona from Dumbarton Oaks, the one that she pulled when John was GMing, the dead body that they were like saying was all vampire. So her part was like, I could go in there and try and steal this though. But she's not thinking she can like assault it. It would be using her as a ragabash to sneak in and find a way to basically abscond with the body so she could properly bury it and claim it. And then get another Metis, physical body out of the hands of supposed worm enemies that could reveal their kind, with a slip, or on purpose. So, but she ended up just too busy and doing too many things, and it's not something that the coterie wanted to do, which is fine. I mean, I was just throwing.
I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, well, she had mentioned it, but it never came to fruition, and she's far too busy now. And she doesn't care about rank, so it's something like with werewolves. If you guys haven't played werewolf before, as opposed to like generation, where you get more powerful things, once you get past, once you get an elder status, 7th gen or lower, this has, they have a rank system. Basically it's called renown. So like the more good deeds they do, or deeds that are like directly tied with their auspice, kind of quote unquote class, like in her, she's a rogue or a ragabash. So if you do more things related to those and that help out the Guru kind, you get renown, which allows you ultimately to go for a higher rank, which means then spirits will teach you better gifts, which are their spiritual powers. So that's, metagaming. That's kind of what, she was looking at then, but she can't do any of that now. It doesn't matter. So she's just kind of switched sides entirely, gone a different direction. If she decides to do it, it would be completely on her, and I just don't.
I would think she's. No. It seemed like she would have some werewolf inclination still. That she might still want to do some of those.
She might. So, well, you guys will just have to see. Right now, she's trying to embrace the vampire aspect as much as she can. She's doing the full immersion thing, and she's almost like, this weight's been lifted off her shoulders, and she's totally turned her back on her kind because she sees it as she's been tortured for so long and abused that she wants nothing to do with them. And she really does embrace this other side that, very ironically, has embraced her, and she gets, warmth and love from, and so I have her playing very much, into a more of a full immersion and wanting to just embrace it fully. But you're right. She's not evil. Like she's not talking. She still hates the Black Spirals. Like she still hates the enemies of the Guru. She's not talking to Banes, at least not yet. So she's like trying to skate two worlds, and she has no idea where she fits in either of them right now. It's like it's a completely new territory for anyone, and she's going with this very high octane coterie that has a huge amount of respect within vampire kind, and that apparently vampires can create 7.0 earthquakes where there's no fault line, and we'll get into that easier. But so that was an interesting session. You guys ended up going through and besting the drug dealers. You called for backup because you're like, okay, we've gotten our blood. That was the other thing. Like the whole coterie was low on blood. You guys were all like really low. And so
yeah, I think I only had like 2 blood left at that time.
Yeah. So you guys ended up, and unfortunately, because of the amount of healing, you still ended up with not too much blood. You got some, but we also brought up the whole problem of what happens if you were to drink from fully tripping out druggies, and what that happened. What happens with that, depending on what they had in their system. So you guys avoided that pretty well. It was a close call, though, if I recall. I think was it Ringil that was thinking about
Yeah, I asked about it because
and then think about Riley if she had followed suit, right?
Exactly. Having
Very good.
a brand new abomination vampire werewolf tripping out on heroin
Tripping out.
blood would not be
Oh,
very
dear.
good, probably.
That's a good session.
Yeah. Why are you carrying a head in your hands? Huh? Oh, yeah.
I wanted it for later.
Moving its mouth and shit.
Hi, I'm a drug dealer.
Hello.
I'm dead now.
I have no idea what I'm doing. Anyway, so you guys ended up, but you took Trey, and you guys basically dominated the crap out of him. And then Jessica used her eyes on him, so you guys had him. Like, basically, he was yours for all intents and purposes. Like multiple people had him mentally, pretty fucked. And so then you guys had talked to our dog, and our dog's just like, "What? Why is he still alive? Get rid of him in the worst way possible." And that's when you guys found out that he was actually a suspected cop killer of mortals, but still, our dog's like, yeah, still, he's a fucking class A douchebag. We want to kill him bad. And so you guys kind of, and I know that kind of piqued the ear of Vincent. So much so that it would move him in a in a different direction later. Let's see. So I have the next session then, because this was kind of spilled over into another session. The coterie finished up the drug den, took Trey, and then left with the other dealers, druggies, for the responders to deal with. They talked to our dog, found out about Trey, and then also talked about that our dog had shown that he had intel suggesting that there were 3 Nosferatu that had survived the Sabbat captivity so far. And as the location of where they might be. And so, let's see here. Black Spiral arrived. Let's see here. This was when, so you guys split up. You had Ward decided to go.
Party.
Right. Well, that's the thing for these guys. So the first thing that happened was, I believe it was Vincent took Trey to the old warehouse. So Evans, the serial killer's warehouse by the airport, right? But at the same time, so this is the next evening, Ward talked to the Nosferatu, and they were ready to do the hacking. So maybe we could talk about that, because that was definitely an interesting session. So everything had come to place. The lady that you had given the mental suggestion to go ahead and it's totally safe to upload this strange hard drive, thumb drive to the company computers deep in the facility. You'll be fine. And so she did that, obviously, and then you guys had your window. So all the you guys were talking. John was there, with everybody basically on like the equivalent of this, Discord or whatever, and all of the it was a bank of Nosferatu hackers, led by a very charismatic Oracle who was spewing her
Just sit down.
insistent that people keep to it and keep hacking good. And you guys ended up breaking in. So John, are you still there? You're muted if you are. There you go.
I am.
So or anybody else who wants to talk about it, what did you guys think of that?
Aaron, do you want a burrito?
Well, if I remember, John got some really awesome rolls on that.
He started off with awesome rolls, yeah. He did. So
I'm trying to remember where it turned south exactly.
Well, so to give you the background of what happened, and you kind of figured this out while you guys were hacking real time, but apparently you guys were up against an AI cybersecurity system that was basically learning and adapting as you guys were hacking in. So I had basically 2 major roles every round. So the first one was to, go in, and basically it was like, can you avoid the security? And then can you hack into the deeper security buried in the number of folders? So
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't. I was misremembering for a moment. I wouldn't say it ever went really south. Overall, there was no real blowback as far as no loss on our side for either the Nosferatu or myself. Other than, of course, the equipment, but you kind of expect to lose that in the process. As far as look, once it's been compromised, it's been compromised. We got what we wanted. This stuff can be disposed of as evidence, so that nothing can be tracked down later either. But yeah, no, we were successful in digging deep into the system. I'd say we really got mostly into one particular set of files really deep, and then kind of surface level on a number of other areas. Basically, getting the tip of the iceberg as to some of what Megadon was up to across dozens of different projects. All sorts of things that had implications.
Keep talking.
We didn't get any. Sure. We didn't get any concrete facts on a lot of stuff, but everything from, of course, old footage and pictures of Nazi experiments and hinting at the creation of some of the Tismitsi ghouls or blood brothers of the merged, the various merged bodies, into one hulking monstrosity. So pictures of old experiments and things like that, or a bunch of stuff referring to some allusions to the sort of the rage serum that we had picked out of the telepathy incident, picking out of Dr. Taylor's brain. And so a lot of allusions to a ton of different side projects. And then most of the data that we really dug into was in regards to the one of them was in regards to the experimentation on kindred forms. As well as ammunition and the live testing of various things against supernatural beings, including kindred specifically. So heavily damning evidence that the prince had been turning over the various kindred for that experimentation to a group of humans and or non-vampire supernatural. So kind of exactly the silver bullet we need to have all kinds of Justicars showing up from the Camarilla hierarchy.
Yeah, and so
basically we got him.
You did, and it worked out perfectly. So I have to tell you, and for those listening, there were three overall folders. One of which was the Grail Initiative, the other is the Stardust Initiative, and then the Fomark Initiative. And so within the Grail Initiative, there were three subfolders, and you guys got so I think you got the whole Grail Initiative one. So you got all three of those because you had 7 successes or something like that on your first one. It was amazing. So I was like, okay, you could just copy that whole folder. That one's something you could just completely upload and then you or download, take it off, and so you have it. And I had a whole bunch of kind of red herrings in there, and you guys stumbled into a couple of them. A lot of them were just sort of interesting, but I figured that, being such a secure facility and having its hands in a lot of different things, there would be a lot that you could potentially, abscond with and certainly things that you can pull. But, so use Project Sunrise. You can harness the solar UV products, right? And so this is where this kind of ties back into what you were talking about, Ben. So,
Ooh, Aaron, I got this one because you're right.
Okay.
I remember. I do specifically. Okay. I was waiting for because I forgot to mention that, and when you mentioned that to Ben, I was like, wait a minute. I remember exactly this one. The other important connection that we finally kind of made was that the prince was not some magical demigod of sunlight and lasers. Well, lasers maybe, but was not summoning down the wrath of God. He was just calling on his buddies from Megadon because we found actual photographic evidence from the scene of that fight taken by Megadon personnel, including Dr. Taylor himself, of the effects. So it was a proving. It was kind of a proving ground moment of them actually testing the weapon against in a live scenario. And so they were there to witness it. But basically, it's space laser. It's a satellite that is, or a series of satellites bouncing the sunlight off of each other and amplifying it to essentially blast, vampires. Or at least it certainly worked against vampires. I don't know if it's going to be able to concentrate that. We really didn't get into could it be more effective against living targets or structures.
It suggested based on the findings that it couldn't. So when you were looking at it, it barely did anything, but it was pure actual sunlight and therefore enough to be kind of the lower level of, sun exposure. But it's in the middle of the night and it's called on a 3 meter area. So they're able to concentrate it when they get all the, everything aligned. And they could get it to a fairly accurate point, to the point where it's like right before him, right before the prince being him. And so, yeah, it was definitely, they got pictures of it. They have the, all the schematics, everything downloaded from it. And a lot of the footage from that night from the vehicle that the sheriff had been aware was there, but was told by the prince to stand down and basically not explore pulling that thread anymore. And the sheriff was like, okay, I have higher orders on this. He didn't say this, but he's kind of like, this still doesn't look right because I know they weren't any vampires, because there are no vampires that I know of, unless they're one of the independents, which is something we should know about. All I can tell is that there were humans in that car. So we need to deal with this one way or another. So I'm kind of confused. And that's why, this all sort of ties together with that and provides a lot of this proof of just so many different inner workings with this particular prince and and Pentex, essentially. And so, but it's interesting. The other thing too, so we had Project Sunrise, which was harnessing, the UV products. So this includes the injections, munitions, etc. And then Kennedy, the prince, also tapped in to try to redirect and concentrate sun rays by satellite, which is what you guys just talked about, sort of a super weapon from a vampire standpoint. It doesn't do anything to humans or anything else, but as you can imagine, still has quite a bit of effect on it. So let's see here. I think you guys, let's see. You guys had Project Lazarus 2.0. So, and then Project Legion. These are things I think you guys had. Isn't that what you had, John? Or do you have it written down, all the different projects that you had?
I do, but I don't have that right in front of me. I'd have to get up and go grab that. It was pretty exhaustive, though. I don't remember them by name.
That's why I want to talk. I'll just briefly talk about a little bit and just to show what we were talking about. But for the Stardust Initiative, so that was all Grail Initiative. So Grail Initiative is actually much more vampire related, which is good that you guys decided. And this is all random. You just have these three folders with a whole shitload of subfolders, and he just happened to pick the right one, which is kind of fun. Stardust Initiative. We have, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different subfolders on that one. And then the Fomark Initiative is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9. So that has 9 subfolders. And the Fomark Initiative is kind of the largest one, but it also has a lot of the oldest data. And of interest to that one, for kind of Rusty's standpoint, this is the one where you got the Hecatoncheires. So that was definitely with pictures from Auschwitz, January 25th, 1945. And it has a series of basically photos that suggested, a massive battle that had occurred there. That for some reason, Megadon was very interested in at least maintaining the records and potentially recreating what appeared to be a monstrosity of fused bodies that had a series of what looks like, since you guys know better now, almost like werewolf claw and bite and everything. It was definitely dead, but it was there, and something that they were definitely cataloging, and they were trying to, see how it was created initially. And it references a certain kind of dark matter material. So the other thing that you guys had was Project Cain. So Project Cain under the Stardust Initiative. This one is Serum 431. Ben, you might recognize this a little bit, but it's a rage serum that basically reverses the feelings. I think we talked about this the last session, but this is where they actually show a series of pictures that actually highlight werewolves in the greater Ukrainian area. that had been in some forest that, even shows, certain female werewolf that was tearing into what's labeled as kin. And, it shows a whole bunch of different effects in kind of a laboratory setting on people. And interestingly enough, it seemed like it wasn't just effective with werewolves, although that seems to be the main target. It can be used to great effect on people, what they call kinfolk. You're not sure what that is. And it had not really gone tested with vampires, but they can't recreate it because apparently, according to the logs, it had been the facility where the original formula had been stored had been completely compromised, leading to a need to increase cybersecurity. The formula was lost, and so these scientists are trying to recreate it, including this Dr. Taylor as a part of a world network trying to recreate this thing, but have since been unsuccessful. So
yeah, that was a cool tie-in.
Yeah,
I think it kind of reminded me of like the Scarecrow's hallucinogen, from the Batman universe. It's same kind of idea, just powerful fear-based hallucinogen.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's definitely has super Scarecrow ties for sure. But I have to say this because this is kind of a fun little thing, and I'm sure if Brandon ever hears it, he's going to get pissed off. But yeah, it's another player that played in this particular this Ukrainian this Chernobyl game that I had. But he loves to create kind of combat monsters, and so I was just thinking in my head one day, trying to come up with an idea kind of to keep things interesting, because at that point he had picked up Troll Skin, he had Luna's armor, he was already a Get a Fenris, a rune. It's very powerful, right? He was a combat monster under no uncertain circumstances. And it's very difficult in this game once you have someone that plays that kind of character to try and balance out combat sometimes, because if you have a really bad role for him and the massive monster that would actually be necessary to create kind of a challenge for him does beat him, then he's so much more powerful than the other players. It can create a nasty situation for a potential party wipe. So I'm trying to figure out ways so that I'm not just throwing against these massive, Black Spiral Dancers or, Void crawlers or whatever. I'm like, well, thinking about logically, how do you take down like an elephant, right? I mean, you can dart and you can use serum, right? You go into the bloodstream and it kind of bypasses if you have this needle. It's not going for damage. What it's going for is introducing, some sort of a foreign substance that'll go and affect you. And in that case, I kind of saw it as, well, that could be my in to having a nasty surprise for the characters. And it was kind of a, very much a threat to the party. Very quickly, the players eventually realized, I'm not surrounded by Fomori because you guys were about to slaughter everybody that was around you. And then you realize that this guy's not warping and he's talking to me. He's trying to engage me in conversation. Why would I even talk to him? I should just rip his head off. But hold on, something's not right. After you feeling the prick of the dart. So anyway, just as a completely side note, but I just kind of thought that was a fun kind of tie-in, and I thought you'd appreciate that, Ben. So
yeah, that was cool.
So anyway, so you guys got it. You guys got the evidence that you needed to bring the prince down, essentially, or at least provide the sheriff with the information that he needed, which then he could take directly to the Archon. So, big things coming down the pipe. Assuming the transport was able to make it successfully to the Archon. So that was a big session. There was a lot going on, and eventually what I had happening is the AI learned and got smarter in the sense that it made the difficulty go up for John in order to succeed, for Ward and the hacking team to continue to hack. And eventually they just got blocked out. And so, but you got a number of really good files, and you got the ones that really counted, honestly. And a couple of fluff ones there too that are just kind of interesting. So that was definitely very effective. Let's see here. So, meanwhile, Ringil, you decide to go meet with the prince, and this was where you would go in and cash in your favor, right?
Yes.
So you basically wanted to meet with the prince. How was that meeting for you? What are kind of your takeaways from that meeting?
So I went to go meet with the prince to use my boon to have the permission to make a childer. And so when I met him, first off, Jonathan Drake was nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking with him, the prince, it went pretty well. You know, he was happy to see me, of course, and or happy to see Ringil. And I guess pleasantly surprised, considering how old Ringil is and not having even requested to make a childer of any sort. And probably the big thing, though, was that the prince liked that he was going to him rather than to the gangrel primogen for permission, because of course the childer, if it was with the primogen, would have been beholden to the Gangle clan rather than just straight to me or the prince.
Let's talk about that really quick, because what would be in your mind, you know, kind of what was going through your mind as far as why because you actually cashed in your personal boon to do this, and that I talked about a little bit earlier, but you know, one of the advantages is it's sort of a no questions asked in a way, and it's like, you know, so what is it in so far as how you understand it? You know, what are some of the what made you come to that conclusion to do that? I guess was it the
biggest worry. Sorry, go ahead. What?
Go ahead. You're good.
Well, so my biggest worry was basically having Riley not being under my protection because of course she's a very special case.
Yeah. So the gangrel in the area are basically assigned. They're given more latitude with regards to their creation of children.
If she had been,
we might be losing him. Hey man, why don't you drop out and come back in here?
To be primogen holding to.
Maybe it'll help if I turn off my video. Just less video feeds go.
Is this any better?
Yeah, it sounds better now. Keep talking though.
So, if she had been promised to me by the gangrel primogen, she would have been beholden first to the clan, and I could possibly have not had direct supervision over her, and she might have been taken out of my purview, so to say. And considering that she is in such a unique individual in as far as what she is, Rengil's fear was that, of course, if she was found out for being an abomination, not only would she be destroyed, but he would also probably have some very bad things happen to him. And you know, he doesn't want that to happen to Riley, and so he's trying to give her the best possible chance of surviving in the long term. And by using his boon through the prince, it means that he gets to keep basically full control of her or full responsibility of her. And basically nobody has the what is it? I guess jurisdiction to mess with her other than the prince himself.
Right.
That's what I at least took from it.
Yeah. So you could have spared yourself the boon, but in this case, you decided to cash it in, and I would say it was probably a good move, especially under the circumstances, since she had already been created at this point, which was sort of the problem, because you'd already created, and then you guys, because you're forced upon that situation, and you're kind of coming up after the fact. I mean, you left that detail out, but you're like, I'd like to, your permission, and then you're basically going to take that card and apply it to her. And as long as nobody like dominates you and really asks that specific question, which is highly unlikely, they'd be much more interested in other crazy shit you guys have been involved in. That would be kind of a low on the totem pole at this point, but they'd have to go through that kind of
only other thing
system to figure it out.
Yeah. Though the only other worry, though, is that the Dayman might recognize her if he's ever nearby, because...
Sure. You guys, what did you guys introduce her as?
Well, so we introduced her as a gangrel who was an associate of mine.
Yep.
And
he's like, she was already a gangrel. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So like,
or the Tremere.
So
the Tremere know differently. A lot of them, the higher ups.
So that's a
bit
of a
worry.
That
out.
Yeah,
totally.
Anyway,
so all that kind of transpired in that session. The other thing that happened too, what would happen is Vincent would take the ex-military drug dealer Trey and take him to go deal with him in the at Evan's warehouse. And so let's talk about what happened there. What happened with that there, Rusty?
We don't like to talk about that.
Yeah, you told them, you're like, yeah, you should go in and clean out everything that's in that. Just kill anything that's in the warehouse. So what happened?
The premise of taking him there was to take you back a little bit when our dog asked him, why is this guy still alive? Take him out, make it hurt, that sort of thing. Well, Vincent felt and still feels that he owes Reggie one for taking the hit for what he did in his part in diablerizing the serial killer. And going against the prince's wishes, and Reggie pretty much taking full responsibility and the retaliation that happened to him. So Vincent feels, hey man, I owe you one. I owe you several, and whatever you need, I'm there. I got your back. So when Reggie, like I said, specifically asked, hey, take this guy out, make that shit hurt, Vincent was like, absolutely, that's what I do. I do this. I can do that, no problem. So he's still dominated. He's still dominated
for like a week or odd or whatever it was. Yeah,
it was a long time. So Vincent trying to he split the group up, yes, but only because he was trying to close a loose end,
trying to spare them their humanity.
Well, that, and trying to speed up, like not let the group go do this while he does this and just takes care of this and gets it done and out of the way. So
Ringo might not have liked you doing this, but anyway, continue.
Yeah, he did kind of speak up earlier before he left, I think, about what he was planning to do.
And so he didn't know where to take him at first, and then decided, you know what? Where we picked up...
there's an out-of-the-way place. Nobody goes. It's
no
quiet.
No one goes there. It's abandoned. It's quiet.
Nobody's going to hear screams.
Cops aren't going to be there. No one's going to hear screams. We're going to go in here, and Vincent's just going to do the deed. So, after you... go in there, clear out whoever's the vagabonds, the homeless, whatever's in there, clear them out, get rid of them.
So he goes in. He's all ready to go and bust some caps, man. He's going in there getting ready. And you hear talking. You hear talking. You're kind of like, why? Who the hell is he actually talking to somebody in there? and you take a step, and what happens?
So he takes a step in and he wants to turn the lights off so that this human doesn't see this coming. And all of a sudden, he hears Evan's voice. "You're mine." And the door slams shut. Yeah. So apparently, either the spirit of Evan is still there or something.
Yeah, so you were trying to figure out, and it was engaging with you a little bit. And messing with you. Yeah. You're seeing shadows and stuff, and you're kind of like, what the hell? But you also hear Trey talking with somebody, and pretty rough with somebody. But he you rolled pretty poorly with regards to seeing who the hell that was. But who was that, Rusty?
So
Yes, Rusty, who was it?
that was the hunter that was made not by me.
The hunter was back in the area where actually Ringill had told him to meet him a number of times, and the hunter was there. So Trey comes in. His orders are to clear it out and kill anybody that's in there, and so Trey starts attacking the hunter.
Yeah, they started. He kind of starts attacking him, and then when Vincent realizes who it is,
and he's like, "This, I'm the orders of my master, Vincent. I got to kill you."
Yeah.
That's so much better.
Yeah. So Vincent's like, he walks in, he sees this, he's like, "Whoa, hold on, not this guy."
Trying to make peace with him. I like him a lot better than I like you, Trey.
Pretty much. And
us and this hunter go way back. He's been trying to kill us for years.
For years,
exactly,
right?
Why are you special?
And he's the one guy Vincent's trying to show that, hey, I'm not like what you think I am. I mean, yes, I'm not human, but I'm not the bad guy you think I am. And
well,
they had a.
But then what happened?
So there was an exchange of words.
So Rusty does get him to stop fighting.
Mm-hmm.
For a second.
I get him to stop fighting for a second, and
but not before the fighter hits him in the face with the baseball bat.
Yeah, and like cripples him.
Well, Trey took the shot at him first, and I did not get a chance to. I tried to deflect it, and it didn't happen. He still got him in the arm or something.
Yeah.
And that, of course, pissed a Hunter off. Hunter was going to go after him again. This was what was his name? But the old Samuel L. Jackson guy. What is his name?
Gerald.
Yeah, Chaps, right?
Chaps.
Is it Harold? Chaps.
Gerald. Yeah, I think it's Gerald. Gerald Miller.
So and he's now like, okay, well, I'm going to put an end to him, and I'm like, whoa, hold on. And then Trey had the baseball bat.
No,
and
Trey had a gun, and then Chaps had the baseball bat.
Chaps had the baseball bat, and Chaps did get him a good one right in the face.
Oh yeah, he was crippled. Yeah, Trey was crippled, and then you pushed him up against the fence basically, and then you're like, "I'll just finish him off. I'll do us both a favor," and then Chaps is like, "Wait, no, you're not. No, you're gonna kill him. We've already defeated him. Don't kill him."
Yeah. and I tried to explain to him that there are reasons that he needed to go.
He's like, "No, you're not the judge, jury, and executioner."
And we did finally come to agreement that he was just going to leave, and I said, I don't,
Well, so he was talking to someone in an earpiece,
right?
And he said, "Looks like your friends are here," and you were like, "You need to get the hell out of here. I'll just take care of him, whatever. Just get out of here." And you made a really good persuasion check because originally it would require a good roll for him to leave because he saw what you're probably going to do, right? He didn't know how,
right.
But he was like, he's going to kill him in some horrible way, and I'm not for that, right? We need to bring him in authorities. He needs to, blah, 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 right? I mean, I batted him in the head, but, that was self-defense. Now he's basically crippled.
Right. Right, and so
convinced him.
So yeah,
So he leaves, exit door left, actually in the back, right? And
Yeah.
then the whole coterie arrives. And
it was right before the coterie arrived that Vincent actually did dismember him.
yeah, you went horde form right in front of him to his horror, and then the last thing he sees is a Vincent in horde form ripping him limb from limb.
Yes.
No, actually, you didn't. We were all in there, and I was the one who shot him first. Because you were going to rip him apart alive, and I wasn't going to let you do that because I tried to convince you not to. But then Ringil, offed him.
That's right. He shot him in the head, which irritated Vincent because he was trying to do something for Reggie that Reggie asked him to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did, and then he still did it. He still ripped him apart just because he said he would.
Yep.
And then I don't know, was it Ringil who tried to go after Chaps?
No, Ward was doing, I think, a little bit of investigation work or something, and went in the back, but then didn't see anything out of the ordinary. It was like, it looks like it's used. Like last time, this wasn't open because it was it was like the storage cage on the back half of the building, or the back half of the bottom level of the building. And then he had actually access to it, so he kind of walked back there. He heard something, right? I think it was or someone did. I want to say it was Ward, but and then kind of did a quick investigation, but didn't really see anything because by that point, the Chaps had enough time to basically exit. Yeah. So then you guys were called back to our dogs. We're actually coming close to the finale here. Our dog called you back in, and you guys met with him, presented the evidence of the prince working with Megadon, the experiments on the vampires. Our dog makes copies and will send the info to the Archon. He also tasked you guys, though, with the rescue of the Nosferatu, saying that's kind of the next step in this whole thing. We need to look after our own. Nosferatu have suffered enough. We need to get them out of there. And specifically pointed to those that were captured by some entity known as the Warden. This was the same Warden, apparently, that Sheena, Tabby, the wayward Tremere that had absconded with the gem, had been working with to get that. So those lines had intersected. And from a storyteller standpoint, it's just basically me finding multiple ways. There's just kind of multiple ways to get you guys in case you don't pull on one thread. You guys can still go there or know that you have to have that as an option. So you guys suit up and go into Sabat territory, Southern Maryland, at the Charles Detention Center. So you guys drive up to the detention center, although before the detention center, so you get off the highway, you go past the police department, and then what happened, guys?
Well, we certainly see there's a shitstorm going on.
Yep. You guys see a lot of floodlights. You hear a lot of kind of yelling, some gunfire happening at the actual detention center. What happens before that as you guys are driving up?
No, we got shot at by some very obviously possessed police officers.
Well, I mean, all right, to go into that, right? So you guys pull up. There's actually a blockade, right? There's a blockade of 2 police cars. It looks like a few policemen that are there.
Yeah, we did.
And
I guess
they stop
we
you guys.
didn't initially start. Yeah, we didn't initially go. We
didn't know they were possessed initially.
Right. And it's easy to forget, too, because it devolved pretty quickly into sheer chaos for seemed like 6 sessions in a row of just mangling bodies left and right. Compared to how there was one.
It was nuts.
There was a 10-minute period of calm, and then the next 3 sessions were chaos. And really, it just amounted to we drove up. There was a police blockade, just one vehicle with a couple of officers standing at the ready, blocking the road. But it was ahead of the actual detention center. So we played nice, played nice in the sandbox, see what this is all about. Pull up, because, we don't think that they're expecting company. I don't know, we didn't exactly announce our plans on Twitter or whatever. So we roll up and... and let him come up and chat us up and talk to him a little bit. And very quickly, and I'm trying to remember what was the tip off, but very quickly,
Nice.
yeah, I wanted to say it was somebody spotted the telltale flicker of flames in the eyes of a possessed person.
So it's not just a possessed person; it's a specific possession. In this case, indicative of the entity specifically that you guys dealt with in Boston. And so when it saw you, and it didn't happen to see Steve because Steve wasn't there, but when it saw you, that's what.
Well, I didn't actually reveal myself until I started shooting at it. When I rolled down the window and started shooting, that's when it saw me and did the old "Hello Ward" business. But yeah, that was Legion from Boston has that telltale sign.
So the entity is called Legion, and that's from the biblical times. You can look them up, but or look them up. I guess they would identify in the plural for sure. So basically, I have that as the demonic entity that has taken hold in Baltimore and DC now, or is attempting to gain a foothold there, and had taken over. So I have it as Legion's specialty is possession, and they can possess multiple things, and they can possess anyone that has an impure heart, essentially, which is like the vast majority of people these days. And so, it had a couple of cops. And so you guys basically drive by the blockade. You drop the guys, and as you're dropping them, you guys notice the kind of the
a couple of them too.
Fleas, and then they come to, and like you can shoot them and they just absorb the damage, or they take the damage, but they're like they don't feel the damage, right? You know that they're getting shot. I mean, they still have blood and everything else. But they don't show. It's as if they're immune to the pain, essentially.
Right.
And until the possession leaves, when the entity leaves the people, then they go back into whatever state they were, having done what they've done. So anyways, you guys blast past that, and you get to the detention center.
Yeah, it was going pretty. I mean, we had a far more successful ramming moment than we have in the past. I'll give it that. We may have mowed down a number of looked like drug-addled transigent types. Basically these were Well, yeah, but the vast majority of what we've seen from Legion's position have a tendency towards the down and out, the gangbanger and the homeless person and the people who are going to be vulnerable, it seems like, or vulnerable to corruption in their circumstances.
Yep. Absolutely.
Potentially. So yeah, but we mowed through a number of those, thinking everything's going hunky dory. Pull up to and so far it was, and it was definitely from the talk from the possessed. It was very clear that this was Legion trying to break into the prison or to the detention center against the better interests of Mammon, who is the entity we're expecting to be in the Black Gem. So we didn't expect Legion to be involved at all. He's not supposed to be there at all. We're there for the Gem. We're there for the Warden.
Because the Warden is a Sabbat, as far as you know. Then there's you guys. Apparently there's Bali involved, but you haven't been able to get a lot of details of that. And now there's this other entity, Legion, that's there to get the gem, and you don't know to what end.
Yeah, or just mess with Mammon. We're not really sure at that particular point. Other than it's very clear that we've walked into the middle of a demon fight and aren't necessarily on either side. But as we're pulling up, it seems to be going good. I mean, the possessed are just normal people. Where they're not resistant to vehicles. So we get out of the vehicle. So much so
that Ward was kind of disappointed later. But we'll go into that.
Well, yeah, actually. So we get out of the vehicle. We're about to bust into the facility, and we are going through, combat, some basic stuff, a little shooting, a little this, that. And Ward goes to use his signature blood draining, and he's been using his dual mental ability power. So he's feeling pretty hot, like swinging his lightsaber around. His sword is covered in flaming green flames, and he's draining blood left and right. And then he rolls a massive botch on blood magic against one of the possessed, and that's kind of where it fell apart.
Was it like 3 botch or something?
It was, which is insanely bad, considering he rolls 10 dice against the difficulty of. I mean, it's possible, but a difficulty of 8, 10 dice. That was huge bad luck.
Yeah.
Next thing he knows, he's in. It seems pretty apparent that he's in some sort of hallucination, some sort of, either he's trapped in his own brain, he's in a hallucination, something's going on, right? He's transported to another realm, stepped in the astral plane, whatever, right? He's not totally sure, but the others are still going through the motions of combat, getting into the facility, and they're going to kind of go off. It's almost like we split the party at that particular moment. So they go off and continue sort of the fight for the most part. But Ward is in his own mind, unbeknownst to him, in his own internal mental landscape, now having a conversation with this entity who he knows as Legion, in his own head, as Legion starts to try and come up with some sort of Faustian bargain. At first, it's really just you should leave. You don't have a dog in this fight, and then it becomes the Faustian bargain. So I won't get too heavy into that. If people want to talk about kind of where things went outside, because. There was some cell phone chatter going on to be discreet so that the player did not know necessarily the outcome of some of his actions. I guess maybe I should mention that is, so from his perspective, Ward is standing in the same in the same parking lot he was in outside a detention center just a moment ago, but now it's broad daylight and there's nobody around. And then all of a sudden there's one person around, and then there's millions of that same person, essentially. So it's Legion manifesting himself as a handsome gentleman or whatever, and then all of a sudden perspective shifts and there's tons and tons of them, but only one of them is talking at a time, and they're having a nice little chat. And at first Ward is trying to play cool and basically is like, okay, well, I'm clearly you have taken possession of me on some level, or you have locked minds with me or whatever. So I'm not going to panic, because I'm gonna do my level best to leverage all my mental and magical abilities to trap you in my body. Let's see if I can contain you in this realm. And so he starts applying. I start asking Aaron, okay, he's going to blindly try this ability, and he's just going to keep trying to fish for answers. And one of them included even trying to hit the demon with his blood drain ability in this realm. Just to see what would happen. And the demon seems intrigued and encourages him. Oh, try it again on this other one over here. Yeah, and that's where the others might have a feeling on what was going on there in the real world. What was happening, Vincent? You seem to have strong opinions about it.
Well, if
getting attacked and getting our blood drained by our coterie member for no apparent fucking reason. There was that thing. And then Vincent was like, fuck this, I'm out. I can't take this, I gotta go.
And so pretty much for some background on this, in my game, and I think it's pretty consistent with canon, but generally, possession of vampires is incredibly rare. There's a specific Bane that can do it. But it's not something even that, Legion themselves talks about, doing at all in the past. So in his, in Legion's experience in my game, this is kind of all new to him and very fascinating. But, he's like, basically, how the hell did this happen? And I don't have full control, but I have some control right now. So what is this? So he's really kind of practicing or having Ward show him using his own mind how to activate his vampire abilities that otherwise he'd have no clue he could even do. Anyway, so I just thought that was kind of a fascinating session. It was kind of an interesting one for sure.
On the plus side, what Ward thought was happening was that he was using this blood drain ability against this imaginary entity and having some sort of spiritual effect on him, possibly. It felt like it was nourishing him with his blood, so he couldn't tell the difference. But, he figured this is probably in his head. What was really happening is he actually was activating the discipline just against his friends and draining their blood. Doesn't cause damage, it just drains their blood supply, which is pretty inconvenient later when Ward's sitting around going, why are you guys so low on blood? I'm doing fine. Yeah, probably less fun for the Ventru especially, because it's hard to get that blood back when you're that picky. But he didn't know that. Wasn't really intentional. And so he switches over because clearly he's not going to do anything that the demon wants him to do. The fact that the demon was intrigued and interested after the first time was like, okay, he seems happy about this. I'm not going to keep doing that. Don't know why, but I'm just going to switch tactics. So after a number of rolls, really pushing, spending a lot of willpower and pushing into like telepathy and trying to sort of role play our way through this kind of uncharted territory. Essentially, we get to a point where Ward has sort of regained control over some of the mental landscape without necessarily being able to reconnect to his body. And the demon starts to get a little bit less comfortable in his skin, literally. And so he ends up making a more favorable offer to Ward, saying, okay, here's what I'll give you if you do this. And Ward actually, finally, he hears something that actually tempts him and says yes. So the final deal, and this is actually not player knowledge per se, although it did mostly happen at the table. But Ward basically agreed that he would allow Legion, he would even assist in recovering the gem, but would allow Legion to have the gem containing his supposedly his enemy and Mammon, and that in exchange, Ward would not seek to actively, and one of the big caveats that was that Ward would also not seek to actively fight, harm, or summon Legion. So he's not going to summon him up in like a year. And this is for a long time. This is a period of over 600 years that we have this armistice. In exchange, Legion also agrees to act to engage in no hostilities against any of Ward's coterie or Ward himself for the same period. Additionally, he agreed to provide the Warden to Ward to Diablerize. So he would assist in the capture of the Warden and in the overthrow of the Prince, should the coterie engage in such behavior. Those were the two major ones. And then the final major piece was also sharing the arcane, sort of sharing the magical lore necessary to create protective wards against his own kind. So Ward was not satisfied with simply 600 years of peace. Having let Legion in once and made a deal with him on accident, let him in, he wanted to know how to use blood magic to ward against demons, which is a pretty high level. That's a level 5 ritual, so not easily obtained. So where better to obtain it than a demon himself teaching you as part of the bargain how to keep you out, which was a pretty big sticking point for Legion. He didn't want to teach Ward how to fight against him better, but to get what he wanted seemed like a good deal at the time, apparently. So yeah, with that, Ward's thinking, great, I'm going to jump out of my body, or I'll be back in control. Seems like it's win-win. Yeah, the Chantry doesn't get its gem, but it sounds like Legion is just as good of a captor for Mammon as anything.
However,
so that was the logic.
What ended up happening, though, is that since they would see you blood draining and acting, very atypical for you, in the sense that you were literally blood draining from your coterie, you would be staked.
Ringil did not like that.
Yep. So Ringil came behind while, and this is all playing out real time by round. While I had sent an email to John detailing the specifics of their agreement. So he had to go through and literally read real time while we're discussing rounds and everything. And then, so Ringil staked him, and that's how we left the session. Well, the next session came back, and I had him do like the whole poltergeist. They're not poltergeist. It was the, the head turn around.
You think Exorcist, yeah.
Exorcist, that's it. And so, literally Ward's head turned right around while he's staked because it's Legion. It's not the vampire that's in control. And then basically started fighting them. So it was a real-time counter for while Ward was trying to figure out and sign the contract, which would allow him to take back over for when, Legion would have using his body to continue to fight, knowing the disciplines that he knows now. So anyway, so it was kind of an interesting little like real time, and unbeknownst to John, really, that was kind of going. I mean, I think you could probably figure it out, but
Sure, best of your knowledge a little bit.
yeah. But anyway, it was just kind of an interesting like real time thing. But because he went through it fast, he did it make his agreement, and then it kind of just went away, and he snapped back into it, and then we could go on. So. But while that was all going on, Jessica was running into the facility and right away ran into whom?
That would have been the one.
That bastard.
The one we were calling Pearl.
Get in my belly.
Mark, like a baby.
Mark.
We had called him Pearl, I think, because we didn't know his name earlier. He was the blood brother core that we'd only caught a glimpse of at the time that we were festing.
Yeah, when you guys had the big blood brother fight at the end of the last story, or 2 stories previous, when you diablerized one of them, you had visions of another brother that was intimately connected with the blood brothers, but that wasn't present. And was that supremely obese, and that's why they call him Pearl, because of Blade, right? So he's really obese, really big dude, and basically he was sort of the lower generation and sort of the progenitor of this particular blood brothers, who happened to serve this person called the Warden, who was in charge, presumably, of this Charles Detention Center. So you guys, you run into him, but it wasn't a combat, right? You go in as a snake, and so kind of looks at you, and he's dealing with possessed.
Yeah, he had seen the shadows even before I started turning.
Yeah,
he had seen the shadows on the cameras and assumed we were La Sombra coming there to help them, and I did not dissuade him of that idea.
Right. And then you guys heard the intercom where the Warden, some voice that came on and basically was telling you guys to for Mark to bring you guys to him so that they could all consolidate and get out of here because the facility had been overrun, so that they could concentrate their forces, and then you guys could help them get out. Him clearly being under the same impression that you guys were SWAT. So the majority of the party had followed him, and he just went barreling towards the center of the facility, going through. And this one was mostly just like, me narrating, but, slaughtering things. And he's this monstrosity. So Mark actually binds with 3 other blood brothers that he had around him and created this mass of nastiness and multiple bodies coming out. And he had actually open up his own, belly, and then basically took like, bones from his legs and his arms, and then sheared them off as teeth. So he had like a belly maw, and multiple, other mouths and eyes coming from all directions, and would just move to go towards the Warden. So you guys made your way into the courtyard, and at this point, the players started to see that a lot of the other entities, the other possessed, were there, but they weren't really like interfering with anything they were doing. This ties directly into the agreement that, unbeknownst to the coterie, that Ward had made on behalf of the coterie, and so they were basically leaving you guys to your effects, and in their own way wanted you to get to the center. So you guys did, but again, split. So we had, I believe it was Steve, Jessica, and that was it, right? You 2 that had gone in with the blood brother, and then had gotten, an audience to go see the Warden. But
at the time we had started to, Vincent was with us, and Jessica was unaware, even though the player was aware. Jessica was unaware that Vincent had heard the commotion at the front door with Ringle and Ward and had turned around, she assumed he was behind us.
He had, if I recall correctly, Vincent was with the other group, was with when the staking happened. He had watched over that to make sure it didn't go far south. And then when he came in, he had to use a number of rounds to shift, I believe it was, for horrid form. And so he lost a couple of rounds. And so he was with the other group. You guys actually went separately because you guys went before the warden's cameras, just before the hallway to go meet him. And then you guys ran into some problems convincing them that you were actually who you...
Somebody else was with us, though. Somebody else was with us because she assumed there was somebody behind us.
No.
When we first went in.
I think it was just Steve and you, the first group. Because they had to all go in the hard way, and they had that upfront fight with Mark when you guys were engaging directly with the warden, and he was talking to you and Steve.
You and Steve ended up in there, and then that's when you guys saw the Nosferatu, and you ended up helping him.
Yeah, because the Nosferatu you were looking for had been dressed up like a doll, and was basically like kind of a plaything for the warden. So anyway, so you guys go into the central building, which is in its own little courtyard, and then you guys get to the top floor. You go down, and it's like this really nice, lavishly, furnished hallway with a nice, huge locked oak door before you, and a big camera system right there. And that's when you guys begin talking, and you kind of botch your rolls on that one. You didn't botch, but you failed, if I recall correctly. You got really low number of successes.
I did all right. I think Steve kind of.
Yeah, Steve had some.
Steve did what Steve does.
Steve
failed his social role.
Are you guys with Sabat? Maybe.
Maybe.
We hate Sabat. Oh, hey, I'm not. I mean, no, we love them. We love me.
Do you like Sabat?
Oh, wait, it's got to be your ball.
So you guys, and it actually almost comes to blows, but then Jessica says some stuff that just sort of intrigues the warden. And I'll be honest with you, since the guy's already been Diablerized, he knew you guys weren't being truthful. I think you guys probably figured that out. But he's old, and being Tizmitsi, he's just kind of curious. He knows he's more powerful than you guys, he suspects, based on what he's seeing in the cameras. And so he's just kind of like, well, let's see what they're all about and why they're here. I have no idea why are they here because of Sheena? Like, are they a part of that? Like, for his, and I'm trying to go through in his mind, he's just more curious about the situation. He doesn't understand, but he did see you guys attacking the possessed. So either way, you might be an enemy of my enemy. It might be an ally, or he was prepared to deal with you guys, and was going to talk to you guys and show you guys a whole bunch of things. And oh, by the way, the whole time, this is something Ben might appreciate a little bit. So Timothy and Cade were also made aware of this place and had basically agreed to descend upon the location. And upon seeing, so they actually infiltrated in it from a different direction. And upon seeing that this is a demonic possession on a massive scale from apparently a single entity that's able to, or call it an entity, able to possess a lot of people, they decided that they were going to try and take care of this entity independently of what was going on. And so after fighting a way through, they eventually decided the best course of action would be to basically lock themselves in a cell with one of the possessed, and then they would do their banishing ritual, which would actually bind Legion into Timothy, just like it did with Carnarius. So they were going to do the same thing, understanding full well that it meant Timothy was going to now basically have to be staked indefinitely until they could figure out what to do with all these personalities or just have to destroy him. So anyway, that would come into play later. So keep that in your back pocket. That's happening. And the warden's aware of that as well. It's kind of like, what the hell is truly happening here? All I know is I need to get the hell out of here because there's all kinds of weird shit happening. And this is a weird Tuesday. So as Jessica and Steve got in there, they see this first off, the floor is all glass with some sort of dirt that seems misplaced in it underneath their feet, and they see a stairwell that leads down in the corner of the room. So basically, you guys kind of like, I was expecting a little more conversation. In that when we ended the session with you guys talking with him and the other players breaching into the courtyard, a number of rounds, like 5 or 6 rounds behind you guys, and basically making their way up to the door, but the door had been sealed and was shut, and they didn't see Mark anywhere. So we started the episode, and you guys basically were like, let's do this. So I was, in my mind, I have them all statted out. I know what the warden is, and you guys would find out. He's a 7th gen Tizmitzi. He's nasty. Also happens to be a Kuldric sorcerer. You guys can look that up if you want. But that's how he was doing his elemental stuff. And you've never seen that before. And most people haven't, especially to that level. But he basically kind of fucked you guys up. He fucked up Jessica pretty bad, and Steve. But you guys managed to force him away, and force him downstairs because he was basically looking for an out at that point. He's like, shit, okay, these are enemies. So I need to fucking reassess this, and I don't want to be like dealing with these guys and possessed, which is exactly what Legion had wanted. So he flees downstairs to start getting his stuff ready, where he casts a ritual. And then he does a couple of other things to kind of get ready. He pulled a number of his deeds and some other some money and passports and stuff like that he'd need, kind of expecting you guys to chase back. But he honestly, if you guys had gone down there, he would have killed you, because he can do like attacks from afar and do the enervating thing and basically dehydrate you. And it does 5 lethal damage. He could do that again as many times as he wants to spend blood, and he had a crap load of it. But you guys stayed up, and the other party came up and were like basically getting ready to try and break open the door when Mark himself opened up that steel door that leads into it. And then so you guys got in this big combat with Mark. You best Mark, you destroy him. But that's not before you saw one of the powers Ward had been, or John had been like, well, great, I made a deal with his demon, but he's kind of weak. I mean, he just possesses people, and then the people are still weak. Like, what does that do? Well, they were having issues, getting into it, and what Legion did is looked up into the window as one of the guards that was in protecting the warden was looking out, and basically saw that the guy was corrupted enough where he could just take him. And so he just basically took over his body. And then once he was inside behind the protective screens leading into the warden's office, with 5 other automatic armed guards, took over a number of them and just basically slaughtered the ones they couldn't take over. And then opened the door. So, yeah. And so that was where I think Ward was like, oh. Yeah, he can do things. That's gnarly. So, and then having seen, his guards up there just start shooting each other and themselves being possessed and then helping you guys get in, the warden's like, great, now I really have to get out of here. I may have to use my oh shit card. And so they all kind of group up. You guys start doing some fact finding and stuff upstairs, going through and trying to find, you guys find some rituals, you find some other cool things. Ward sees on the monitor that notices that all of the possessed flee at maximum speed away and away from you guys. And he's seeing all of the Legion possessed things converging on a location, which is where Cade and Timothy are. And so Ward looks at it and goes, oh crap, and he's looking and he sees what it looks like it's a banishing or a binding ritual. It's hard to tell. So he gets on the intercom. So what happened there, John? Or Rusty could talk about this one too. Because Rusty switched over to be Cade for a second. Since it's your old character.
Yeah,
Well, it's ruined the deal is what they did, Rusty. Actually, I take that back. They almost ruined the deal, Aaron, but Rusty came through for me.
So Ward tried to convince him for that not to happen when, quite honestly, Cade was against it anyway, knowing mentally where Timothy was. He did not like the fact that he was taking a demon. I mean, he knows that there's a demon in there already. He doesn't know that, in fact, he could take another one. In fact, he's sure he can't.
Yep.
So Cade tries very hard to, although he knows the stakes and knows that Cade can't do that sort of thing. It was more of a relief to Cade knowing that there's other people here that can help with this. Timothy, you need to stop. Let's think about this. Let's do this the right way. And he was trying to hold the demons at bay. And
he's
Cade is really
literally
fucking
holding
strong.
the bars together while they're trying to attack and not doing enough damage because they're still humans and they don't have any
Right.
weapons. But that's why they were bringing the automatic weapons that they had gotten from the guards that they just possessed, that were the personal guard of the warden. They were running as fast as they could to open up fire on them. And then bringing any and all weapons they could so that they could do enough damage to try and drop him and then drop Timothy was the idea. But and then Ward basically was trying to convince him, but wasn't getting through to Timothy. So he switched gears and decided to tack to because Timothy was pretty set on doing this, knowing full well that this was the best chance to take this entity down or at least trap it.
We call this pulling a Ward when the squishy goody two shoes character refuses to do the smart thing because they're dead set on doing the nice thing, like not turning their werewolf friend into a vampire. Well, fine, we'll pull a Ward and we'll just force it. Or when the tiny little child is like, I'm gonna capture the demon in my body no matter how much it costs me. Well, that would ruin my deal. So let's pull a Ward and convince his bodyguard to stop him.
So he Rusty, you decide you're like, well, there's a small chance because Timothy's dead set on doing it. And you were like, there's a small chance that he would agree. And you rolled randomly for it. And what happened?
Yeah, and he rolled in favor of to get him to stop.
So he stopped holding the bars and basically tackles Timothy off of them, immediately stopping the ritual, and then basically Legion had surrounded them all, but was just looking at them at that point. And then Timothy was just basically super upset that he had done that, and said this was probably our only chance to do this and do it right. And what are you doing? Why are you listening to this this Tremere? Basically, that's where we left off for that, because the character's like, all right, we fucked around enough. We need to go down and deal with this warden guy. So you guys go down the stairs pretty rapidly, but it was not all at once. You guys were going down over the course of like 2 rounds. And you guys went down.
So while they're still looking at the monitors and stuff, Vincent was trying to get to them, but he doesn't know the layout, and he knows that there's a staircase there. He bolted down the stairs to try to go to, not knowing exactly where he's going, because he didn't see the warden go down these stairs, and he doesn't know the layout, and he's like, I got to get to them. So he bailed to try to find his way down there, and it just incidentally went down the stairs, and I think Ringill followed.
Yes, I followed next.
Yeah, he followed in after me. We got down there. We didn't see anything. At first, we didn't see anything.
I was having to spend a lot of willpower to try
an advanced form of horrid form, which is almost like a bat-like form, which basically appeared behind you. And then you guys basically got engaged in a number of in some combat. Well, the kind of end thing was you guys all finally went downstairs. There was some fighting, but you guys were still up. The warden knew that there was automatic weapons of his guys which had been possessed. There were other possessed throughout the area. He was surrounded, and so he was like, okay, I have to do Kapala's Fist, which is basically level 5. I believe it's the Earth Kuldric sorcery, where you basically fly up in the air and slam the ground, and he creates a 7.0 earthquake epicenter right there on the facility and levels basically the whole thing. And shoots out this shockwave, does the damage. Everybody basically survives, and we roll randomly to see who's trapped. And it's really funny, but and so I took it to the side and I told Rusty what happened with Cade. So unbeknownst to you guys, because you guys weren't watching the cameras at this point, but this was basically a round after you guys stopped watching the cameras. All of the entities that were surrounding Cade and Timothy basically started trying to execute them. So they all attacked and were going and dropped Timothy. But he got back up, and then Cade basically, they were trying to fight him off, and Cade even dropped but then got back up because he had enough blood. And then the only thing that really saved them, though, is he dropped the dark cloud, the ink cloud on it. And at that moment, because of the round count, that is when Kapala's Fury went off, and that's when the earthquake hit. So they had to absorb the damage, and then I rolled randomly to see who was trapped. Timothy was down, so if he had been crushed, he would have been permanently dead, but he made it. And then, Vincent was still up, but he got crushed. He did get trapped, so he went into torpor. So that had happened kind of off to the side, unbeknownst. I thought some of you guys might be interested in that.
Not Vincent, Cade.
I'm sorry, Cade, not Vincent. Yes, Vincent was fine. You guys actually all were fine, if I recall correctly. The only one that wasn't was the elder, the warden, got trapped by the beams in the doorway that collapsed on himself after he did this massive hit, and was thus trapped, and then kind of started the whole, after you guys sort of dusted yourself off, you're like, what the hell was that? Like literally a 7.0 earthquake happening at your feet in the middle of Maryland, and leveled this whole facility and for like a mile out. And then you guys ended up coming too. And so that pretty much ended that whole saga. You guys ended up with the Elder. There was more of a fight there because you guys wanted to take it round to round. The last kind of the second part, the final part to the boss fight, was where you guys started feeding on him, and then he basically did like a ring of fire around himself, where like lava literally erupted around him in a ring, in like a multi-level ring. And you guys, Ward, for his part, being very tenacious, decided to attach to his leg and continue to drain and drain and drain. And it wasn't until a choice shot from our Jessica Young at extreme long range that just so happened to tag him right in the head. And after rolling no successes on a soak, he dropped mid-air.
Could not have been a better fucking shot.
You would give
Out
me
of nowhere. So what was
and
what was Jessica doing? So talk about Jessica, because Jessica actually missed this whole boss fight except for that last part. What were you trying to do? Because you were severely wounded after that initial foray with this elder.
Yes, even with her overconfident flaw, she realized quickly that that elder was not someone that they were going to be able to take down at that point, and especially with the wounds that she had. So she went back to their primary objective, which was to rescue the Nosferatu. That was their first and primary objective, and she was sticking to that. So she got Nosferatu and was trying to get him out.
But you both were crippled, so you guys were moving pretty slow, except on rounds where you could use... Yeah, go ahead.
And then Legion, with all the possessed people with the automatic rifles...
Because they made their way back, because they had already neutralized Timothy and the thing, so they could go back to focusing on getting the gem, which is what they wanted.
Right, and they were trying to convince her to go back and fight, and she's telling him no, because at this point, not even blood is going to fix me. I can't fight. We need to get this guy out of here. By the end of that, she was surmising between the conversation that she was hearing over the PA system that something, she never figured out what exactly, but she was piecing together something was going on with Legion and Ward, and she didn't know what it was. But all she knew that was Legion was trying to convince her to go back and fight. And so he tried to take, he did take out the Nosferatu.
So so you basically like, no, we need to get this guy back to safety. And he said, oh, so this is what's holding you back? And then opened fire point blank with full auto and just tore apart the Nosferatu and killed him right then and there. And basically said, okay, you no longer have anything you needed to protect. Go with your coterie mate. We're going to take down the Elder now.
Yeah. And
right in front of, and to the point of final death. We talked about this, right? Because it was like the full auto, point blank, enough damage. It just like cut apart the body, like, and it split it up.
Yeah, and at that point, I mean, that devastated her, but she still wasn't going to go down and fight. Not only would it have taken her many, many rounds to get back there, she knew she was gravely wounded, and she thought her coterie mates aren't going to be dumb enough to keep trying to take down this really powerful entity. Yeah.
She thought wrong.
And she would be the one to take it out.
She was under duress. She wasn't thinking clearly, or else she would have realized.
Yeah, so you dropped your dark cloud and then suffocated two of them. Two of the ones, so they all stopped firing at you because they couldn't see anything. Then essentially, later you would see the Elder flying away.
She survived the quake, and right after that, she saw this thing flying up there, and all she knew is that had to be. She didn't know what his powers were or anything, but she could surmise that must be an enemy, if not the enemy. So she took aim. She's down 2 dice because of her wounds, and no more willpower really left to spend to make a success. You gave her a difficulty 10 because of the range, because she's got a 35 millimeter.
Plus, it was a headshot.
But it was a headshot, and so
that's it.
She fired. I got 1 success, but because it was a headshot, it did extra damage.
3 extra damage,
I rolled 3,
total.
Almost all successes on the damage.
Yeah. So
what an epic turn of events.
Yeah,
it was epic, dude. It was.
I thought he was going to get away. He was flying away. All he had to do was look back. Well, so the other thing too is that he was frenzied. So he couldn't use any more mental disciplines, the Elder, the Warden. Ward had attached himself, basically, or was flying behind him and then attached himself to the leg and was trying to drain him that way. And so, it would have been basically, he was in that, but since he couldn't get rid of him, he would have turned and basically gone full, because he was still in his horde form, he would have gone full toe-to-toe next round. So actually it was like, I was like, oh, and I mean, Ward knew he could die doing this, and he could have. And actually, because of the way it worked, the lava that he had created in rings around himself to protect himself almost killed Steve and Vincent, because I think, or no, Vincent, Ringo and Vincent, because Ringo had dropped
all 3 of us.
All 3 of you, because you guys are trying to protect each other, and then Vincent jumped into the basically lava spewing geysers to like throw Ringel out of the area, but in doing
Ringel
so dropped himself. So, but I had another round counter that was separate that was with Riley and the gargoyle that had been created by Ward, that they were coming in as reinforcements, basically. And so they kind of helped fly in, grab people, and then we basically were like, okay, this huge epicenter of an earthquake that rippled out from this location's here, and everybody's kind of limping back to their safe places. And then we'll pick up where that left off. So that's basically, you're now caught up.
Yeah, that was an epic ending. Dropping the Elder, Tizmichi, Vincent knowing that had Ringel stayed in the fire one more round, he would have met final death. So Vincent threw himself into the lava to save his life, to throw him out of it. And sadly, freaking soak dice that he had didn't do shit.
No.
did not soak a damn point of damage and dropped him himself. So yeah, that's gonna be a good one to freaking Vincent to live with, knowing that he dropped saving Ringgill. The hell. But then yeah, Riley and the Gargoyle coming in at the last minute, seeing Vincent, which I think we've all looked through the books. It does not say that when in horde form you go back to your natural form. So I mean, here they are trying to pull out a 9-foot freaking monstrosity out of a pool of lava.
But that's why you have a gargoyle and a abomination doing it, right? So I thought that was
sure.
Certainly doable with that in mind. Like if it had been like Sabrina or something, like no fucking way. Like that's not happening. She's like, I'm afraid he's gonna die like this. But those two in particular would be able to do it. So anyway, that's it. That takes us into the Black Sun's Coterie adventures through our third story of 4 in this chronicle. So that's it. Anybody else have any other stories or anything else you guys want to talk about?
It's been an awesome ride.
You guys like
throwing me forward? Thanks for catching me up. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Yeah, we've been missing you.
For real, dude.
Likewise.
Need to come back.
All right, guys. Well, hearing nothing, I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll pick up whenever we play again. But it's not gonna be for a while, so probably a couple months, I think, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll post those games once we get back up and running. But for those of you that have tuned in, thanks for listening. Peace out.
Cool.
Adios.
Good to see you guys.
See ya.
Later, Ben.